Welcome back to NanoCruising. I'm your host, Stefan Marceau. In today's episode, we talk with Justin of the sailing channel Travel by Water. Justin is a doer. He really specializes in paddle sailing. So today you'll find out about the advantages of paddle sailing, some of the ideas behind paddle sailing, how you can sail upwind, and the stability while paddle sailing. He'll also talk about his participation in the Everglades Challenge. So join us. A lot of great info today. Today we have Justin from Travel by Water, a YouTube channel. Justin's also a member of the Can-Am group and also, I guess, the Ottawa group. You probably hang on both groups, really, right?
Yeah.
Justin is a really great example of what I call a NanoCruising. He'll tell us a little bit about how he got into it on all the boats, but he's a great example of a doer. You know, he builds boats and he involves his kids. So I'd love to see that as well. So to pass it on to the next generation. So if you could start, Justin, telling me about what, I think you say you're really drawn to paddle sailing, you know, kayak or canoe and so on. So if you can tell me how you got into that and your passion for it, that'd be great.
So paddle sailing, I haven't known about it for all that long. I discovered it in about 2018. I was doing a race called the Everglades Challenge.
Right. We'll cover that too. Absolutely.
Yeah. And I was sailing on a Beach Cat, a Brindle 16.
Okay.
And we were about halfway between a couple of checkpoints out off the Everglades coast, out in the Gulf of Mexico, you know, really pretty big water.
Yeah. And
we started to overtake another catamaran that was out there. And it was a really odd looking sailing machine. And when we got up beside it, what I realized it was two sailing canoes, catamaran together. So they were linked with a cross beam, and these guys, they were comfortable. They were passing snacks back and forth between their boats. They were joking, and they were keeping up with a Beach Cat, right?
Wow.
Brindle 16, not high performance, but you know, in the 70s it would have been considered a high performance Beach Cat, and
right.
You know, after a couple hundred miles type of thing, they were even with us. So that's when I started to look into it and started to do research on what that was all about. That was my first encounter with that.
Right. That reminds me of one of my first spotter, the 19 that I had many years ago. I was on Lake Ontario, pretty far out, and it was bumpy up and down. I'll cut this out just for letting you know, but it was bumping up and down, you know, and I was sailing out, and I see these people, and I thought, they're in a kayak, in a canoe or something. So I thought, let me go see if they need help. Something was pretty nasty. They were exactly like you said. They were just two canoes, 4 people. They were tied together. They were having lunch, and this thing it's like, they were so comfortable. It was amazing to see. It's like, wow. But it seems it's very stable and very good for that, right? So
yeah, they just kind of go along.
And so you talk about the Everglades. Maybe we'll talk about it. I thought it was a Hobie. I saw the video, but you say it's a Brindle 16. It's pretty similar. Tell us about how you got into that and what made you choose the Brindle for that. And tell us about your experience for that, for the Everglades Challenge. It's amazing. I've seen so many videos of that. It's a dream of doing it or going to the Texas 200, but you've actually done it. So you're probably the first person that I know in person that actually done that.
Yeah,
so.
I've done 3 actually.
You've done 3, so there you go.
The first was on the Brindle, and so I guess I wasn't aware of the Everglades Challenge. I was researching Florida sailing online, probably in the wintertime,
right?
as a lot of us, I'm sure, do.
A lot of Canadians
do. And I was interested in South Florida. Curious specifically about the Everglades and the Florida Keys. And so I was, I call it researching it. I was watching YouTube is what I was doing.
Yeah, that's right.
And I happened across this video from, it was 2015. It was called The Challenge. It was probably about 40 minutes long, maybe, this video. And it was just amazing. And it looked like so much fun. And I called up my brother and I said, look, I found this thing online. I'm going to send you the video and tell me what you think. You know, is this something that you'd be interested in? And he was.
Mm.
So we started researching boats, and we knew what the course was. We knew the distance was 300 miles in roughly 8 days. So we knew there were no motors allowed, and it was ocean as well as through island archipelagos. So we knew that we had to make 40 miles a day type of thing, minimum, in all kind of conditions, with no motor.
Right.
We originally we were looking at Wayfarers and CL16s, and as we researched them, we knew that they would be comfortable,
but very wet,
and seaworthy, yeah, and but not all that fast, right? They're kind of they're not planing hulls. They'll kind of max out at about somewhere around their theoretical hull speed, maybe a little bit better. I mean, they're quick boats, but they're not fast boats. And so we started to look into beach cats because something like a Wayfarer might reach at 7 knots. Something like a Prindle will reach at 12 to 14 knots. So you're talking twice the speed, and we thought, okay, well, if we're going to sail this thing, let's sail it in a fast boat.
Yeah, good choice.
And so, of course, we needed to find something local and available, right? We didn't have a huge budget. We looked into Hobies and Prindles, and there's some design features that make the Prindle a better choice for us. Namely, it had a higher volume hull, so it's less susceptible to pitch poling. It has inspection ports in each hull, so you've got in-hull storage rather than strapping a high bag to a trampoline. And it comes from the factory with reef points. So and that's actually one of the rules, is the boat has to be able to reef. So it had a lot of features. Now I know lots of people do them have done it in Hobie 16, but we selected Prindle for those features. Yeah.
Nice. And how was it? Talk to me about your experience doing the challenge. What was the biggest challenge, and what was the reward part?
Yeah, it's amazing. It's a lot of fun. It's so much fun. That's why people keep going back. Is even from Canada type of thing. It's like a 3-day drive.
Yeah, that's right.
But so I guess that first year we left the beach, and I don't know how much you know, but there's checkpoints that are fairly far inland, and you've got to go up rivers and into marinas and through canals and this sort of thing to reach some. It's not just kind of open ocean go type of thing. You've got to maneuver up these things. So we left, and in that first 22 hours actually, we covered like 100 miles.
Wow.
So we were a third done in less than the first day, and that's the beach cat. That's the beach cat speed. We had a north kind of a north wind, so we were running downwind at really good speed.
Nice.
Stopped on a beach and had a coffee then, and then we carried on.
Right.
We sailed through the night. There were 2 of us. So one guy navigated while the other guy sailed, and we would switch off like that. So operated 24 hours a day for the first bit, and then we camped about the halfway mark. And we slept on a beach, which was fantastic. Sleeping on the beach under the stars.
Right.
And then down the Everglades coast is what happens, right? So the first half of the event is kind of populated West Florida, Tampa area, Fort Myers. So it's nice because it's warm.
That's right.
But where it gets really interesting is the real wilderness is that Everglades coast, and that's kind of the last half. From the Everglades coast and into the Florida Keys.
Yeah, I guess when you pass, I think it's Marco Island, I guess, is the last population.
Exactly.
Right.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah.
And then crossing the Florida Bay, I guess, then. Yeah.
Florida Bay was really interesting. We left, and there were thunderheads, and we thought, okay, well, you know what? It's not supposed to be bad. And so we followed another boat, because we didn't know the way through the thing. It was a scamp that we followed. I don't know if you know it's like a John Welsford design.
Yep, I know.
Really,
I know that boat very
really
well.
quick boat. Yeah, really quick boats and light air. So we were following him, and then we passed him because with the thunderstorms, we started to pick up speed. And then darkness came, and so there's just these stakes in the mud, and we're just flying along. It's completely dark now. It's pouring rain, lightning everywhere, and rust in Florida Bay. We got into Key Largo
pretty late at night, I think, from the video.
Pretty late at night. I don't remember the. It only took us like 6 hours or something like that to cross Florida Bay.
Wow. And you did really well. So, from what I understand.
4.5 days. 4.5 days,
yeah.
I think it was.
Yeah. And that's interesting that the Everglade Challenge drew you to paddle sailing. So tell me about your first inkling with that and your first forays into that and your first adventures.
So, like I said, I'd seen these boats, and what they were was they were Kruger Sea Winds with BSE sail rigs, ball log sail designs, sail rigs, 36 square feet. So I got home and I started to research these things. So basically, they're decked composite canoes.
Wow!
But the first thing I found out is they're like $7,000-8,000 used. So that was way out of my budget.
Wow!
So I started to look into different ways to accomplish this. Mm-hmm. And I discovered a company out of, I think they're out of Ohio, that makes sail rigs that you can attach to any kind of off-the-shelf boat.
Right.
So that's what I did. Is I took a off-the-shelf Perception Sea kayak and put this Falcon 12 square foot Falcon sail on it. Mm-hmm. And I had about 2 years to practice with that before entering it into that event. Although I did do other races with it. I did other local races with it in Ontario. So that was my first sailing kayak, was that Perception. It had a 23-inch beam, so kind of not a lot of initial stability. It would certainly handle the sail area, but with a paddle brace or by leaning out and that sort of thing. But the real challenge with that boat was when it was at rest. Say you needed to eat a sandwich or take a photo or anything like that. The boat doesn't really have the stability. To snack and do that sort of thing. So that's why I started to look at other options after that first one. I've since sold that boat.
And what did you move on to?
Well, my main ride right now is a 1967 Grumman 17. So it's I've got 2 sail rigs for it. I've got the
is that BSE. A canoe? What is that, a canoe? I'm sorry.
Yeah, it's a 17-foot aluminum canoe.
Okay, right.
Yeah, and so they come from the factory set up for sailing. They've got mast steps in them. They've got a slot for a rudder. Mm-hmm. So it's you can take any Grumman canoe and convert it to sail with kind of minimal expense and minimal effort. They're big, comfortable boats. They'll carry 800 pounds worth of camping gear. Mm-hmm. They're stable. So that's my main sailboat that I use these days, is that Grumman 17. And I'm also working on a new skin-on frame deck sailing canoe
that you're building right now. And what is that canoe that you're building?
It's a Percy Blandford PBK 15.
Mm-hmm. And what drew you to that?
I knew that I wanted to build a sailing canoe. There's a number of really good options in stitch and glue by Michael Storer, or I looked at the Artemis by it's from a fellow from Europe somewhere. And problem with both of those designs for me was the size of my basement window. They were too yeah.
I guess you could fix the window.
They were too beamy for my basement window. It was the Artemis that I really wanted to build, but it just wasn't going to work with my window. So I started to research different options, and I came across the skin-on frame boats that were popular kind of in the 30s, 40s,
Yes.
50s. The first Atlantic crossing by kayak was done on in a skin-on frame sailing kayak.
Right.
And so when I kind of discovered that whole world of these old skin-on frame sailing kayaks, I thought, okay, why don't I go with that? And in kind of keeping with that, I decided to go with a really old design, a design from the 1950s that kind of captured the feel of that
Nice.
early canoe and kayak sailing
Right.
when it was big, when it was a big sport.
Right. Right. Well, the original indigenous kayaks were all skin on frames, right? So that was
Right, exactly.
That
Yep.
and that's coming back. I mean, there's books on how to redo it and so on. So that's coming back a little bit because you can make it pretty light now, I guess. There's a lot of book on light kayaking and light canoes that are all skin on frames, basically.
Right. Yeah, I just finished my frame today, and the frame weighs 27 pounds.
Wow.
So it's fairly light, and it's only cost me about $400 or $500 to build. So
nice.
It's, if you go to any of the big stores and buy a sea kayak, even a plastic sea kayak, it's going to cost you
it's at
least
$2,000,
right?
Yeah, exactly. The cheap stuff is $800. They're crappy
yeah.
kayaks, right?
Yeah.
So,
yeah, exactly.
Yeah. But you've done a lot of adventuring and you're paddling kayaks. And can you tell me some good stories and some good memories you've had?
I've done some really, really good trips. My first trip was solo on the Rideau Lakes, which is close to home for me.
Yes.
And I was 3 or 4 days following the wind. I didn't really have a destination, and camping at the lock stations in my hammock tent.
Mm-hmm.
And that's beautiful. The Rideau Canal is beautiful.
Mm-hmm.
And then my brother also got into sailing kayak at the same time as me because he was with me, and we saw these guys, these Krugers together. We're like, that looks cool. Let's do that.
Cool. Nice.
So the next trip was a circumnavigation of the Western Thousand Islands.
Mm.
So kind of to the west of Ivy Lee, more or less. It was a 105-kilometer trip that we did over 3 or 4 days.
Wow.
So that was spectacular. It was early in the season, so the current was running strong. So and it was windy and choppy, and well, we sailed together in the Thousand Islands. You know what it's like. In fact, we stayed on Aubrey Island, which is that island that we circumnavigated.
Right.
I believe, right? I think it was.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's right.
So yeah, on that trip we did camp on Aubrey Island.
Right. You go pretty early in the season. I've seen a lot of your videos that go, and you're not afraid of the cold. Let's put it that way, or being cold. So, yeah.
No, but I've got the gear too, right? I've got a dry suit, and I wear it, and so I've got the gear for it. So yeah, I'll go out. As long as the water's liquid, I'll go, and that's both that's kayak sailing. That's one of the advantages. Another advantage to paddle sailing is early season, late season, during COVID, any situation where you don't have access to a boat ramp, you don't need a boat ramp for paddle sailing, right? You can, any muddy shoreline, any dock, anywhere that's adjacent to the water, you can launch the boat, get in, and go. You don't need to be restricted to those areas with a paved boat ramp and a dock and that sort of thing. You just get in and go long before the boat ramps open.
I like that.
Different. And in different places too,
Mm-hmm.
There's places that simply don't have boat ramps at all. Places with portages to get to that second lake, and you have to carry your boat or tow it on a trolley.
Mm-hmm.
You can't do that with a trailer sailor, but you can access different places with a
lot of water. I love the trailer sailor and so on, but it's nice to be able to just go on a whim and go in any little piece of water you see, right? So
yeah,
and
like when you're traveling big distances, say for us coming from Canada, say we want to go to Florida in the winter, and you're looking at a 2 or 3 day drive. That's a long way to tow a trailer.
That's right.
With checking the bearings for heat every hour or two, and
yes.
The lights stop working when you back it into the seawater.
All the time.
Whereas with a car top boat, you have none of those concerns. You've just got a lot more freedom, and
Nice.
and they're seaworthy. You know, they can handle the weather. You know, sea kayaks were originally used for hunting seals and whales and that sort of thing in the Arctic Ocean. You know, they're not calm weather boats.
No, they're good. So, what about so you sail with them? You have lee boards, or what do you do for leeway and things like that?
Yeah. So my first adventures in kayak sailing, I had read some information that you really didn't need a lee board. That's technically true. You don't need a lee board if you want to go downwind, right? If you want to be able to tack upwind and you really want to sail to your destination, wherever it is, then you need a lee board of some description, or a dagger board, or a center board, or whatever it is. So yeah, so my canoe has I've got two different lee board setups for it. One is a single lee board, which is deeper, and then the other one is a dual lee board setup where you can have just the lee one down, which is the kind of the older system. More modern sailing canoes tend to go with a single lee board. It's deep and foil shaped, so they handle a lot like a conventional sailing dinghy.
Nice.
So I do lee boards. The other thing I sometimes do, depending on weather, is I'll go with outriggers, inflatable outriggers, to keep me from tipping over. Cause,
that was one of the questions I had. You know, I've seen you can buy them pretty cheap. Like, they look like Hobie. They're the same shape. You just inflate them and you put them on. I think that's probably one thing you probably could use, I guess, depending if you don't want. Right? So.
That's what I use. That's exactly what I use.
Okay,
the imitation Hobie sidekick, and they're great. I've had them for years, and I've never put a hole in them, and I've never capsized when I've been using them. So I'm happy with those. It's just weather dependent whether I use those. Now, I will sail sometimes without a lee board if I'm doing a specific trip and I know it's going to be downwind, or I know I'm going to be doing a lot of paddling and I don't want to deal with the extra weight. Then I will sometimes do without the lee board. But if it's a kind of a expedition or multi-day type trip where I really don't know what kind of weather I'm going to be facing, then I want the lee board so I can sail upwind rather than paddling upwind.
Exactly. Do these mostly solo, or you found a group you do it with, or your brother, or what's your? It varies, I guess.
Yeah, so my brother, he's into it as well.
Nice.
He has some of the exact same rigs that I have, and so I do it with him. I also do it solo.
Nice.
I've done it also with just kind of mixed fleets of different types of boats.
Mm-hmm.
You show up to a dinghy cruise with a kayak, and people look at you like, "What's this guy doing?" But a kayak will make 2 or 3 knots BMG to weather, and a lot of cruise dinghies won't, and so and then I've also done it with mixed groups of kayaks and canoes as well.
Nice, that's great. Yeah, what's your philosophy when it comes to balancing adventure, safety, and simplicity? You go in very cold water, which scares me. I'm also a Coast Guard auxiliary, and I know what cold water does to a lot of people, even July. So I know you have to get ready for that. So safety is very important of that, right? So how do you prepare for that?
Yeah, so I'm ex-Coast Guard myself. So I've got that same exposure. But first of all, in the cold water, I'll wear a dry suit.
Yeah.
Even if it's hot, I'll wear the dry suit.
Don't chance it. Yeah, exactly.
Thermal layer underneath. I may or may not wear a helmet and goggles. Certainly a tube, ice fishing gloves, or pogies, which is like kind of a mitt for a kayak paddle. So I leverage technology.
Perfect.
Modern, waterproof, breathable Gore-Tex dry suits.
Mm-hmm.
I never go boating without a PFD on. I carry a 406 megahertz PLB all the time when I'm on the water.
Excellent.
Yeah, I navigate with a GPS, so I use technology to my advantage to extend my season, and also, even when the weather's nice, I still use that technology just to make things a little bit safer for me.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Aside from that, you've got the weather. You got to pay attention to the weather, and
big time.
Yeah, and that's true of any small boat. That's not just kayak sailing or canoe sailing. any small open boat, any boat, there's ships that sink because of bad weather, great big ships. So you've really, you've got to watch the weather and, do a risk assessment and say, do I have the skills? Do I have the right equipment? Am I prepared to do this trip? Can I do it safely? If the answer is yes, then I do it. If the answer is no, then I don't.
Well, that's great. And I know definitely in the spring and the fall, the weather can change faster and be a little more intense when that happens. So that's probably something you have to watch a lot more for. You have to be in touch with the nature. I guess a lot of it that I love, sailing, canoeing, kayaking, is you're in touch with nature. The water and of course the wind is so paramount. So
right. And the other thing is your self-rescue. You've got to have a self-rescue.
Good point.
And you've got to practice it. And you've got to practice it in less than ideal conditions to know that you're able to self-rescue.
So you mean capsizing and things like that?
Yeah. Capsize the boat.
Yeah.
Go in the water, right the boat, de-water it, get back in, and get the boat moving again. Because that's going to be a risk with any of these small boats, and any boat that doesn't have a keel is at risk of capsize.
Mm-hmm. What would you tell somebody that's interested into getting into this? Where should they start, or any advice to start easy and simply?
For paddle sailing specifically, I would say just do it. You can do it really, really cheaply.
Yeah.
You can build a canoe from plywood. There's designs online. I'm a big fan of the designer Michael Storer. He's got a quick canoe, which is just made of 3 sheets of plywood.
Yeah.
It can be done in a week or two for
minimal,
under $1,000. Yeah, under $1,000, and it's a decent sailing canoe.
Yeah, I recognize right away when I saw you with that's a Michael Storer boat. I can see that right away. So
yeah, the other option is just to buy a hull and modify it for sailing.
Yeah,
Grumman or any old fiberglass canoe. You can put a sailing board on it and a lee board, and you can make a sail from polytarp. My first canoe sail was actually made from polytarp. It was a sprit rig. And I did a 3-day cruise on the Rideau with it, and then I did another second cruise on the Lake St. Lawrence on the St. Lawrence River, and I broke my mast. And then I decided to get a store-bought sail rig. And it's been great.
Oh, good. So now you're building a boat. Do you have any exciting trips or that you're planning with that already? You're always dreaming in the winter when you're in Canada. So,
well, I love to go to Florida. I've already been once this winter.
Yeah.
So I would like. There's a specific trip I'd like to do called the Wilderness Waterway.
Okay.
Don't know that one. It's about 100 miles through the Everglades backcountry. It's real wilderness. You camp in the mangroves. They've got little platforms for you to camp on. I'd like to do that trip. Whether I do that in a sailing canoe or in my electric boat, I haven't decided yet. I mean, I haven't really got the time to do that right now. But that is one trip that I would like to do, is that Wilderness Waterway through the Florida Everglades.
Wow.
Inland route. Yeah.
Not to you haven't rubbed shoulders too much with gators over there or crocodiles, and they have both. So.
They have both. Yeah, there's alligators, there's crocodiles, there's sharks, there's the large snakes in that area. There's mosquitoes. They're the worst, is the mosquitoes, just like here,
Yeah.
It's the same thing as going camping in Algonquin Park. Sure, there's bears, but it's the mosquitoes that are going to cause you problems. and that's been my experience. It's fighting bugs that really give you a hard time. My best advice is if you want to have an adventure and you want to have an adventure on the water, there's no better way to do it than in a small boat with a sail and a paddle.
Yeah.
You don't need a motor. You don't need a big fancy fiberglass boat with the inboard and all the systems. They're a lot of work. They're a lot of expense. All you really need to get out there and have an adventure is a canoe or a kayak with a sail. And you can do it cheap. You can do it for under $1,000. You can probably do it for under $500. And you can go out and have adventures with all the other boats. It's the same view.
Yeah.
It's a lot less expensive. It's a lot less hassle. I'm storing mine in my basement right now. It's not even out in the garage or out in the yard. Right. They're easy to store. They're inexpensive, and they're highly, highly portable. And they're a lot of fun.
I like that. Well, it's been great talking to you, Justin. Thank you for coming on. It's been a lot of fun and learning a lot. I think our listeners can really jump into the sport easily, which is really what matters, Don't just sit at home, just enjoy life and nature, right? So,
for sure. Yeah, no, it's been great talking to you. Thanks for the opportunity.
A lot of great advice to get started. You can pick up a canoe very cheaply. And you can also build a canoe very cheaply with something like the Quick Canoe, which incidentally, our next episode will be talking to Michael Storr, the designer of the Quick Canoe. He has designed so many different small, useful sailboats and paddle boats. So that should be really great. In the meantime, if you want to help us, you can join the NanoCruising group on Facebook and give us some suggestions on who to meet or connect us to people to talk to. To not miss an episode, join our mailing list at nanocruising.com. I appreciate you all. Thank you for listening, and seize your own adventure.